So over the last several months, I have really started reading a lot more about the effects of social media on our children and on our brains and on our happiness. And the statistics show that getting rid of social media or drastically reducing it really is in our favor all the way around. As I did research about social media, I kept coming up with arguments for ditching the smartphone. And while I am not in favor of that at this point in my life just yet, because I view a smartphone as a tool and tools can be used for good or for bad, however, I do think there's definitely a point to the fact that we probably are on the verge of using our smartphones in a bad way. And so I just want to be very conscious of that in my own life. And I don't think that I was misusing my phone, but I do think that it was going in that direction. I felt like I always could be doing something when I had my smartphone with me. Caused me to just take a step back and say, okay, I really don't want this thing with me that much. I really don't want it to be my crutch of, I have 2 minutes of free time here. What can I cram into that 2 minutes with my smartphone? So Dave and I have together kind of committed to touching our phones less and having our phones less and using our phones less, not because we think they're horrible or because we think everyone should get rid of smartphones, but simply because we don't want to go down that path of being obsessed with our phones and using them in a negative way or in a way that detracts from our lifestyle. Also, I have a cold right now. It is nothing major. I just have a really stuffed up nose and that's all. So if I sound a little different, that's why. This all started when I read a statistic this past summer about a survey that was done in 2016. And honestly, I'm not totally sure I believe this survey, but it said that the average American in 2016 touched their phone over 2,600 times a day. And so they described a touch as if you're scrolling, that would be 1 touch, scroll, 2 touches, scroll, 3 touches. And like if you had a 6-digit password, that's 6 touches to put your password in. But still the math really does not even out, and you would literally have to be just on your phone constantly for all your waking hours, in my opinion. But that's what the survey said in 2016. Either way, I'm sure we touch our phones a lot more than we realize, and certainly a lot more than is necessary. And one way to not touch your phone is to simply not have it with you all the time. But in order to not have it with you all the time, it kind of needs to be less of a draw. For Dave and I, it kind of turned into, how can we make our phone less enticing so that we feel less need to keep it with us all the time and then use and touch it less. So if you have kind of had these thoughts, or if you're just curious to know what we're doing, I'll share 5 quick tips that have helped us to touch and use our phone less and just feel less need to carry it with us all day long. The first one is simply to turn the notifications off. I actually did a full blog post about this a while back because this is something I have done basically since I got my smartphone. I literally would go to settings and every single notification except phone calls and text messages are turned off. So that's something to look into because it is super distracting to have dings and buzzes and vibrations all the time, especially when you're trying really hard not to look at your phone and trying not to keep it with you, but then you hear the ding from the other room or you feel the vibration on your desk and you lose your concentration and you think, I just have to look. So if I could suggest one thing, it would simply be to go into your settings and to turn as many notifications as possible completely off. The second tip, which might sound a little scary for some of you, but it can be easily undone if you don't like it, is to go through and completely delete all of your social media apps and all of your news apps. These are the ones that are going to suck you in to the continual scroll, and this and I can click through this and get to the next thing and scroll, and then there's another link or another profile or another picture and you can click on that to get to the next one, scroll, and before you know it, 20, 30, 40 minutes have gone by and you haven't accomplished anything. You may have even forgotten why you came to your phone in the first place because you got sucked in by a news alert or a social media pop-up. Honestly, it was hard for me to go through and fully delete them from my phone because I thought I'm going to be totally out of the loop. But you can still check in from your computer and you could still download the app again and log on and see what's going on with your news or your social media and then delete it again. The third tip is to sign out of everything, especially email. So I've gone through times where I've completely deleted the email app from my phone, but I realized that really was not practical because there were even times when I was at my kid's school and I had to reference an email from a teacher and then I would have to re-download the app, and that was just silly to me. If it works for you, go for it. I'd encourage you, any apps that you can delete will reduce the amount of time you spend on your phone. But for me, it just wasn't practical to not have email on my phone. However, one thing that I've done so that I don't just grab my phone and quick check my email when it is not necessary is I try to sign out of as many apps as possible when I'm done using them. So if there are certain apps, like even if you're not totally comfortable getting rid of social media apps yet, you could sign out of them, and it just makes it a little bit harder to access them again because you think, oh, I'm gonna have to type my password in, which isn't always that easy to do on a phone, and then sign in again. Is it really worth it? No, I'll just leave my phone turned off. However, if you were in a more emergency type situation and had to access some information on your phone, you could just quick type in that password and it would be right there waiting for you. Okay, the fourth tip is probably one of my favorites because even if you're not willing to delete any apps, even if you're not willing to sign out of your apps, you can still do this and it will visually make your phone look less cluttered and less appealing. Simply remove all of your apps from your home screen. What I've done is my home screen is clear, and then if I scroll one time over to the right, then I have 2 or 3 of the apps that I use all the time. And then if I scroll one more time, then I have all the rest of my apps in folders. So in order to get to anything, I have to scroll 2 or 3 times and then click on a folder and then find the app that I want. And it just takes a little bit longer, and that little bit longer makes it less appealing for me to think, okay, I'm gonna go on my phone and just quick check this, because it just takes a few more swipes, and I don't know why, but that seems to work really well for me. And I've also seen a couple people recommend similar ideas in various books. So it's not just me, it's the really smart people that write books too. And then 5th, wear a watch. I realized I was gravitating towards my phone and picking up my phone and carrying my phone with me so often simply because I wanted to know what time it was. So by simply wearing a watch, I drastically reduced the amount of times I needed to touch and use my phone. And I know some of these might seem like really small things or like they don't make a difference, and maybe they won't make a difference to some of you, but for me, doing these 5 things together for the last several months has made a significant difference in the amount of time I've been using and touching my phone. And for me, that's something that's important to me right now in my life. It was not important to me 5 or 7 years ago, but right now it is, and it's intriguing. All the research that I've been doing and the documentaries I've watched and the articles I've read seem to conclude that our current society is becoming more and more and more obsessed with their phone. And I just feel that for me personally, and Dave agrees, we kind of want to swim the opposite direction. So we're not ready by any means to get rid of our smartphones. We don't think they're horrible. We don't think social media is horrible. But if it's to the point where you feel like you're obsessed with it, or you're even addicted to it, or you're wasting tons of time on it, that's when it might be time to kind of think about some changes that you can make. And so I thought these 5 would be a really easy place to start. So I'll recap them one more time. Just turn your notifications off. Delete social media and news apps. And remember, you can always download them again in about 10 seconds, so it's really not that scary of a decision. Number 3 is to sign out of any apps, especially email. 4th is to remove all the apps from your home screen and just shift them over 1 or 2 screens. And 5th is to wear a watch. So I hope these tips have kind of given you something to think about. I'd love to know if you're already doing them or if you have other really easy ways to prevent yourself from constantly grabbing your phone or constantly having it with you at all times.